What's new in Cobol Check version 0.10? This is the first more or less stable release of Cobol Check, and it's still in an early stage of development. So what's new this time is basic functionality to run test cases. Apart from basic test case functionality, Cobol Check stubs all batch I/O statements. That makes it possible to unit test Cobol programs in isolation from their usual runtime environment and with no dependencies on files. Let's take a look at some of the features of Cobol Check. Notice the directory structure. The production programs live in source main Cobol. The test suites live in source test Cobol. That's the default directory structure for Cobol Check. You can change it by editing the configuration file. Let's look at program Demo 0.10. It contains a few definitions in the data division and some short paragraphs in the procedure division. We'll use it to exercise the basic features of Cobol Check. Each program to be tested has a corresponding subdirectory under source test Cobol. You can have any number of test suite files for each program. In this case, we have 3. Here's the test suite named Alpha Equality Tests. It starts with a test suite statement that has a short description of the purpose of the test suite. That's followed by a number of test cases. Each test case has the usual structure for executable functional checks: arrange, act, assert. The arrange step sets the preconditions for the test case. In this example, that's the move statement that places the value 1 into field WS field 1. Next is the act step. That's the step that invokes the code under test. The code under test here is paragraph 2000 upcase. Finally, there's the assert step. That's where we assert the result we think the code should produce, given the preconditions we established in the arrange step. Cobol Check uses special syntax for assertions. It looks a little bit like Cobol, but it isn't exactly Cobol. Expect is a Cobol Check keyword, and so is to be. This means that after paragraph 2000 upcase runs, given the value we set in field WS field 1, we expect WS field 2 to contain the uppercase value, value 1. Look at the next test case. It's the same, except it uses the keyword to equal instead of to be. The next 2 test cases show that Cobol Check lets you assert equality between 2 fields. And here we see that it can accept an equals sign instead of the keywords to be or to equal. Scrolling down a little, we see that it supports reference modification and expect statements too. Still further down, we see it handles table entries as well. At the bottom, we see we have a little problem with comparing a numeric edited field with a value that contains a decimal point. We'll fix that soon. Okay, so let's run this test suite and see what we get. Cobol Check is a standalone Java program. We invoke it from the command line. The command line option -- programs, or just -p, takes the name of a program to be tested. The command line option -- tests, or just -t, takes the name of a test suite to run. Here we go. Cobol Check emits test results to standard out. If you need to capture the test results in a file, you'll need to redirect standard out. This is how the output from a test run looks. Cobol Check numbers the test cases, echoes the test case name, and shows whether the test case passed or failed. There's another test suite for program Demo 0.10 named Alpha Non-Equality Tests. I'll bet you can guess what that one does. Yep, you guessed it. It's the converse of the alpha equality tests. To assert non-equality, you can use the keyword not. You can write not to be, not to equal, or not the equals sign. Let's run these 2 test suites together. We'll modify the previous command line to use a glob pattern for the test suite name. Both these suites start with the word alpha, so we can write alpha asterisk. Unfortunately, glob patterns aren't working on Microsoft Windows in this release, but we can demonstrate it on this Linux instance. From this, we can see that Cobol Check continues the numbering of test cases through both suites. We can also see that it did not run the 3rd test suite for program Demo 0.10. as its name does not match the glob pattern. The third test suite for program Demo 010 contains test cases for 88-level items. Here's what it looks like. You can assert that an 88-level item is true or not true, and if the data item is defined with a false clause, you can check for false or not false too. To run all the test suites for a program, you omit the -- tests command line option like this. And here's what we get. Cobol Check handles numeric data items too. This is program numbers. We can use it to exercise various expect statements. Here's the test suite named Symbolic Relations Test. It contains expect statements that use various symbols for equality and inequality, like equals, not equals, greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, and less than or equal to. Let's run it and see what we get. Okay, so we know Cobol Check can handle alphanumeric items, 88-level items, and numeric items. There are some limitations in this release. The values of all alphanumeric fields referenced in test suites are moved to picture X items of length 256 for comparison in expect statements. So the maximum length Cobol Check can handle is 256 bytes. The values of all numeric fields referenced in test suites are moved to a packed decimal field with the maximum size supported for Cobol Comp3 fields. That means some behaviors of binary and floating point items might not be handled correctly in this release. You don't have to worry about going past column 72 when you write the names of test suites and test cases. Cobol Check will split longer lines correctly for compilation, but it only does one split line, a total of 2 lines for the name. If you need a longer description, you can use comments. Any line in a test suite that has an asterisk as the first non-blank character is treated as a comment. The main use case for Cobol Check is to enable unit testing for old legacy Cobol programs, so we haven't included support for relatively new features like national language text or zero-delimited strings. We also haven't included support for object-oriented Cobol. Those things might be added in future releases if there's a demand. Localized error messages and log messages haven't been reviewed by native speakers. Localized text is likely to look a little strange to native speakers. It's Google Translate quality translations. Cobol Check writes test results to standard out. If you need results written to a file, you must redirect standard out. Verbose forms of greater than and less than, etc. are not supported. You have to use the symbols for greater than, less than. It doesn't support modern free-form Cobol source, and that's by design because the main use case is to work with legacy code. Beyond limitations, there are a few known bugs at this time. You should be able to code globbed file names on the -- programs command line option. That's not working. You should be able to code globbed test suite names on the -- tests command line option. That's not working on Microsoft Windows. You should be able to code multiple program names and multiple test suite names on the command line. On Windows, it only accepts a single value for a program name or test suite name. When you assert that a numeric edited item has the value of an alphanumeric literal representing a number with a decimal point, Cobol Check gets confused about the decimal point. If you want to get a sense of the general development roadmap, check out the Common Test Case Patterns page on the project wiki on GitHub. Each test case pattern is annotated with the release number we're targeting to support it. This is subject to change. To see issues that have been reported, visit the Issues page on the GitHub project. You can filter the issues by milestone to see which ones we're planning to address in upcoming releases. Here are the links to the project homepage and the GitHub project page.